You don't have to follow the traditional path. We're not in traditional times anymore. If you want to go to trade school, great. If you want to go to the military first and serve and figure out, go for it. If you just want to go work, go for it, because incurring that amount of student debt and not knowing what you're going to do, there's an argument to be made for that.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Dads on Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, Josh Ashford, and on this show, man, we are all about helping dads be the best versions of themselves, whatever that means, man. And I got my buddy, Randy Canivel, Midwestern State Director, Flower Mound. Did I say that right? Or did I get it back?
That's right. That is perfect. Just like that.
You know what? It doesn't matter, man.
Man,
we're talking about education. We're talking about education, man. I'm excited about this. Randy, how do you introduce yourself? Like I introduced you how I wanted to, but like, how do you introduce yourself?
I just say Randy Canivel. Nice to meet you. How's your day going? What can I do for you? I don't really lead with the titles as much. I mean, unless I guess we're in a formal academic setting, but you know me. I mean, we serve together in the community. I'm just a man of the people.
I like it. Well, when you said I'm just Randy Canivel, I was just like, you know who I am. Like,
there's my intro right there.
I'm Randy.
You know who I am. Oh man. All right.
No, man. This conversation, like I said, I don't ever always know where they're gonna go, but I want to have this conversation about higher education, right?
Right.
Especially in this whole, I don't even want to call it COVID, because I don't want to say post-COVID, because we're not over COVID, but we're in this COVID-esque era, right? And it's kind of changed things. Like, I think things were already changing, right?
Yeah.
Just the dynamics of higher education and things like that. And so the first question I want to ask, and it's kind of, I know the answer, but I'm asking anyways, but then there's a follow-up question, is that, does higher education still matter? The answer is yes. And if so, like, okay, how do we apply it to this new world? And let me put some caveat on there, is that, a lot of people are talking about trade schools are coming back, which they are. Fantastic. We need trades, right?
Absolutely.
And the person that is going to a trade school is not necessarily the person that's going to go to Midwestern State, which is a part of the Texas Tech, right?
Texas Tech University system.
That's part of the Texas Tech University system. So it's a higher ed, right? It's not junior college. Like, I don't want to say you're the real deal, but it is what it is. I don't know other words. Like, I'm not a wordsmith, right? So the trade schools are not the same path as those higher ed. And so I'm wondering, like, how do they still play, man? Like, because I
like your question, because higher education, I think absolutely it still matters. But I think for everybody, what does that look like? Right. Yeah. And then so in this post-COVID era, and even before COVID, I think what you were seeing in higher education, and I'll speak to four-year institutions because that's who I work with, is this alignment from K through 12 and community college or colleges to 4 years. So K through 12, 2-year to 4-year.
Okay.
So for those, you bring up a good point about trade schools, but what happens if he or she wants to do more or go beyond the trade school? Is there a pathway for them to access post-secondary education and become a manager, become a CEO? It's basically, we're giving them a vision of what you can do if you get tired of the trade part. You want to become more white collar. So I think it's how do we basically bridge these different entities together? And one thing you're seeing now in post-secondary or higher education is alignment between business, private sector, and higher education.
What do you mean?
So basically, how do we workforce readiness? And so a good example would be you and I, we're non-traditional. We would be non-traditional students if we went back to school. We don't have time to sit in a classroom for 3 or 4 hours a day, right? But we have a lot of knowledge, skills, and abilities that we could put in place of that. And so I'm wondering, how can we take those competencies that we have and put them kind of clep, if you will, and then give us that experience to show, hey, when we go to the workforce, we know these things already because we are adult learners. Give us the credit, give us the course credit, and let's go ahead and get that degree quickly so we can get that job. and we're not having to go to school for 4 years or 3 years, whatever. We know what we know, and we should be given a degree, and that should be conferred, rather quickly, sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
So, okay. So we talked about non-traditional. So like, people that want to go back to school, people that are going to school later in life, but like, what is that like what you guys are shifting to? Or are you guys still looking for those, like the K-12 right after 12, you go, go into college, or like, what are you guys looking for? Are you trying to be that hodgepodge? Because I love what Midwestern State Flower Mound campus is doing, because like you guys are in this metroplex where there are tons of 4-year degrees, like main campuses. We have North Texas, we have SMU, we have TCU, we have UTD, like we can go on and on, right? But you guys are really like in the suburbs, but you have like specialties, and I think they fit for those that are doing the traditional route and those that are coming back to school, right? So I'm just like, what is Midwestern State Flower Mound really focusing on?
Yeah, so we're, when we opened the campus back in 2018, our focus was going to be students that were non-traditional. So community college transfers, or people like you and I that have some college, but maybe not a bachelor's. Not saying we don't, but we're in that age group. And so we're really set up for those place-bound students, those who are local, they can't move. And so we're addressing a lot of our enrollment at MSU are nurses who are already certified. They're practicing in the hospitals, but they have to get that bachelor's. It's a condition of employment. Or what about these paraprofessionals in the school districts that they've been working and now they want to be a teacher, right? They want to give back. And so we need to get them teachers certified, but they can't quit their jobs either. They've got a family to support. So I think that's that. If you could fulfill that gap, that's where the magic is, and it's kind of still a niche market, really. I mean, adult learners are learn differently than traditional age students, and we know that. The research shows that. But how do we cater to them? That's the art form there, and I think that's something Midwestern State University, specifically Flower Mound, has mastered recently, or continues to master. Right.
So let's jump back into this, like the traditional learners, because this is a question that and this is going to be on a grand scale. This is not necessarily Midwestern State or Midwestern State Flower Mound, right? What does it look like for those parents or students that are out there? They're going through high school. So I'm thinking about, let me just give you an example. I'm thinking about my niece. Like, she's going into the 9th grade this year. She loves graphic design. She loves graphic design. And I'm guessing with our school district here, Louisville ISD, we have some fantastic technology, departments and things like that. But taking those classes take them away from the main campus. And so if she's taking these graphic design classes, I'm wondering, is that going to take away from those necessary classes that she needs to take in order to get to that 4-year college? Does that make sense? So if she's taking these electives, graphic design, like, is that going to hinder her chances of getting into a UT or something like that?
Great question. Not as long as she gets those core classes kind of completed before she graduates. No, but in the state of Texas, we are all about holistic liberal education, meaning that it's not the degree you get is not just a vocation. It prepares you for other things in life. And so a good example is if your niece went to MSU, or let's say she went to NCTC, she has to complete that 42-hour core before she can do anything else. Furthermore, any state institution or any 4-year institution here in the state won't give you your bachelor's unless you complete the Common Core, which is 42 hours. Your English, your math, your history. Doesn't matter if you've already completed your professional courses. Doesn't matter. You have to still complete that core classes, core curriculum. It's just how we're set up in the state, and I think it's been a good thing, honestly.
Is it harder for them though? And so part of it is, yes, I have this question, but then I also have teacher friends that are asking me, like, because they knew I was talking to you, and they were just like, I really want to know, like, hey, and not even like trying to like poke the bear, right? But they were just curious, like, if we have kids that are really interested in something, is them being focused on that going to hinder their chances to go, to that 4-year school? I mean, granted, it's probably going to be harder. Like they're going to have to like do some more work. But I'm just trying to figure out, is it all going to be the same for them, or are they going to have a more difficult path?
They will probably have it. Okay, so two answers here. One, they will probably have a difficult time maybe just being admitted, because you're talking about them going to a state school, even if it's not MSU. Let's say it's UT or A&M. Still got to have those courses. Doesn't matter how great you did in your graphic design. If you aced that, awesome. How'd you do in your algebra? How'd you do in Texas history? You have to have those. So the other option is to go to a more specialized school that just focuses on that. Not necessarily a trade school, but maybe a college or community college that focuses just on that. And then she could transfer to a 4-year later on and complete that bachelor's. I think there's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, we look at our Tech West Center here, Josh, Tech West and Tech East, and they're big on the trade, but the trade stuff, but they have opportunities to keep going to a community college and then transfer to a 4-year. So the second part is it still can happen. It would just be a different route, a different pathway for her.
Where do you see it all going? Like, as just on a grand scale, like where do you see higher ed in general going? Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah. Great question. So
I'm over here in this chair.
So I knew I was going to get grilled tonight. This isn't just going to be a cakewalk. So a few.
It's not. Wait. It's not. This is not grilling. I can grill you. I can bring out. No, I'm just kidding.
Bring it up, brother. You know me. I won't turn it away.
No,
if I don't, you know me. If I don't know the answer, I will find it.
I was gonna say, and honestly, here it is, man. And it's just these are just like things that I'm just thinking about, and that I know
please.
that people out there have questions, and because my goal is always to be a resource, right? Sure. So they might not know these questions to ask, and so I know education matters. I think that's going to be the topic of this episode. Education matters. So regardless, we always got to keep learning, but I just want to know, like, where do we see it going, right? Like higher ed.
Yeah, higher ed. So the landscape. So again, a few thoughts. One, we know the statistics show that the number of traditional students coming from K through 12 to a 4-year is kind of waning. It's decreasing.
Really?
Conversely, adult learners are now going to make up, or non-traditional students are going to make up most of the enrollment going to 2-year and 4-year colleges, probably in the next 5 years. And that's a loose interpretation of the data that I'm trying to cite. Yeah. Two, you're going to see, and we're already seeing it, if you look at certain online schools like your Western Governors, your Phoenix, although they have the kind of the stereotype of being that online school, they actually do a lot of things right.
What do you mean?
Meaning that to get enrolled is a much easier process sometimes than going through a traditional 4-year school, because you don't have all the red tape. Number two, they take into effect that, hey, most of our students are between 25 and 45 years of age.
Okay.
And they can't be in a brick and mortar building because they're trying to work, support their family. So how do we bring education to them? Well, that's online. That's maybe hybrid or blended. Oh, and let's go ahead and accelerate your time. Let's get you done faster, because sometimes getting done faster with your degree is better than having all the scholarship money, right? You want to get it done. Let's get out, right?
Yeah.
That's just the way. That's my second thought. The third one is going to be what I mentioned before. How do we bridge? How do we make it K through 20?
Ooh.
1, 2, 3, right? How do we do that? Because we know industry wants internships. They want a workforce pipeline. Well, right here in our own county, here in Denton County, we have that. We're forming that. Yep. Not just with MSU and NCTC, but look at the whole county. Look at Collin County next to us. Same thing.
Yeah.
So how do we work together rather than being siloed? And so I think that's where it's going. Now, what most people are going to ask you and I is, great, I spent all this money, I got this degree, but I'm not doing the job that I intended to do, and I understand that. But we're also in precarious times right now. Post-COVID, we've got a lot of things going on in the economy. I mean, it's hard for people to just find employees to work, no matter what industry you're in. So,
which is crazy, because I know a ton of people that are willing to work, but they can't find anybody that actually wants to hire them. And I'm just like, I hear it from both sides. I hear it from the corporations, and they're like, oh, nobody wants to work. But then I hear from like people they're like, yo, like I'm looking for jobs. And I say that because I have friends and family members that are actively looking at jobs, and like they apply to these jobs. They're like, they're not even overqualified. Like they're qualified. And they're like, oh, well, we went with somebody else. And so I'm like,
well,
how
I
is
shake
it?
my head. I don't know. I shake my head. And the only reason I shake my head is because during COVID and then 2021, the state was actually giving universities extra money to promote basically what they call retooling or redoing your career. So let's say you did something up to COVID that went to crap, and now you want to go into a new career. Yeah. The state will give you money for that. They called it the retooling grants. I think Midwestern, we got a few $100,000. Yeah. Yeah. But we had to use it by a certain date or we had to give it back. So I think UT got, I think to Tarleton State or maybe they got a bunch of money. You had to apply for it, but you could pretty much do whatever you want to try to promote students to come back and change their career.
Really?
Yeah. So I think it's also how innovative can higher ed be, right? Josh, we can't just sit on our laurels and the old way of doing things is not going to work anymore. Education higher ed is known for not wanting to change. It's slow. But I think we're seeing areas of higher ed wanting to make that change because at the end of the day, it's a bottom dollar chase. Still got to make money, unless you're Harvard or Yale, it ain't going to work.
Got to make money. This isn't you. I know you're not a board of regents and things like that, but I'm like, okay, you still got to make money, but how much money, right? And so that's the next question. It's like, do you see anything? And I don't know Midwestern State or whoever, right? Do you see anybody shifting their finance model or how they're approaching that? Because we see a lot of these, I don't want to say hybrids, but silo campuses that you don't necessarily have to go to, the main campus. Like your main campus is what, 2 hours away?
Wichita Falls. Yeah. Traditional brick and mortar. Well, so a couple of thoughts there. So I think when you look at profit maximization or revenue models, lots of ways we can do it. I mean, you can keep cutting and through attrition, you just figure it out that way. But that doesn't work very well. Or you got to find ways to generate more revenue. For Midwestern, it was opening a campus in the Metroplex. But more importantly, most of our classes are online. So we're saving on overhead.
I like it.
And you're saying, well, Randy, you've got a building. True. But we also use that building as a portal for students wanting to go to Wichita Falls. So it's almost like we're meeting them where they're at because about 2,000 of our students come from the Metroplex or the area. Really? So if they need services before they come to Wichita, that's also my job to make sure those services are fulfilled. So, yeah.
How does that compare with like the University of Phoenix and I don't know, does Grand Canyon, do they do online or something like that? I just throw that out there because I keep seeing them and like now I see their baseball team and I'm just like, okay, are they like, and matter of fact, my little cousin, she's going there next year. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't really know like they had like a main campus like that, but like she's going there for like dance and stuff like that. And so I thought they were online.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is the rebirth of these online schools. Well, you're right. So Phoenix, West Coast University, they just built a new extension in Richardson, MSU, Liberty. They all have a physical presence somewhere. But what you're seeing is they're starting to infiltrate high population dense areas like the Metroplex, and it's online. But we have in-person services if you need it because they know people need that physical touch. They need that one-on-one. They need that in person. So I think what you're seeing is this hybrid model of online teaching, but in-person services.
Does Phoenix have a physical campus?
They don't have not here in Texas, but they have a lot of stuff. And theirs is out of Scottsdale.
I didn't know they had a
or Phoenix, or maybe it is in Phoenix, but I think it's in the Phoenix area. They have an actual campus and they're accredited and they're working on raising the status by getting the traditional accreditations that schools like MSU have. But what they're known for is less barriers to entry, flexible paced courses and programs. And usually the cost is sometimes less than a traditional 4-year. Well, who would say no to that? I mean, students are like consumers now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's how we treat them. Look at how the traditional universities are now being built. They look like resorts. They look like hotels, right? Rec centers, amenities, you name. Yeah. Hey, well, hey, I'll spit with you because I mean, it's the truth. It's the truth. And here I am talking, and MSU's. We did that. We spent money on a brand. I ran our wellness center there back in, gosh, 2004 to 2013, 14. When I left to come here, we built a nice wellness center. I think it was about $7 million, and we had the students vote on it. They wanted it. Nice football fields. I mean, nice athletic facilities. You name it, man.
Well, it's been a while since I've been to Wichita Falls. I don't really make a habit to go out there. No shade. Like it's 2 hours. Like
I mean, yeah, I know. I got you.
But like that entire city has really blown up. Like it's when did I get? I got to college in 20. Golly, it's almost been 20 years. Yeah, so I got to UNT in 2005. So I think the last time I was in Wichita Falls was like 2007. So it's changed.
But you look at UNT, you look at Denton. How much has Denton grown because of UNT and that population there? And how big has UNT grown? Right? Not just in Denton.
I think UNT is 37,000 students, and it's the biggest school nobody's ever heard about. Like, so I don't know, man. What do you see as like, and not just Midwestern State, but like, again, I do a lot with the high school students here in the area. And so I don't want to say I'm jaded, but like, obviously everybody doesn't need to go to higher ed. Like,
no,
everybody doesn't.
And I'll say that. I agree. With
so
you.
I'm like, what is that person? And I hate putting people in a box, but like, what does that person right out of high school look like that's going to higher ed? Or you know what I mean? Like, is it somebody that's just doing it that just wants the experience? Is it someone that's just, you know what I mean? Like,
I think there are types, if you will. So the ones that are going to go to higher ed now probably look different than when you and I were coming out of high school, wanting to go into 4-year. I think the ones now are real have a direct path. They've done an internship or an externship. They know exactly what they want to do, and they can articulate that to you. Seriously, and our school and our local school district here at LIs, they do a fantastic job of internships and getting that work, that career day that Lindsay Ayers puts up. They do a great job of that, But for those that don't know what they want to do, they can look that there are so many different things that they're going to say, do, change their mind a million times. They don't know what they want to do. And that I've told people that's okay. You don't have to follow the traditional path. We're not in traditional times anymore. If you want to go to trade school, great. If you want to go to the military first and serve and go for it. If you just want to go work, go for it, because incurring that amount of student debt and not knowing what you're going to do, there's an argument to be made for that, And I'm in so much student debt, but I had to do it. My mom and dad were middle class, and not originally from the United States, and so they were working just to keep the lights on for us. And I'm blessed that they taught me those values, but pretty much had to support myself. I worked, and they gave me a roof over my head while I was in college, but tuition and fees, all out of Sally Mae.
You sound like me. And then hey, what sucks is that you can't hold it against your parents because they did the best they could with the knowledge that they have, right? And so it's the same with my parents. And like, I get my financial aid. They send me the email, and they're like, "Oh, hey, which scholarships are not scrambled? Like, what grants and loans do you want to accept?" And I'm like, "I'm accepting them all, right?" And then
check, and then pull them out.
Check. I get my refund check. Oh, I'm feeling good. But like, nobody told me. Like, nope. You know what I mean? Like, I got to college when I was 17. Like, I was just checking the box. My parents didn't know anything about it. And so I'm just like, now I have a lot of student debt. And so it is what it is. I'm not upset. I just wish someone else would have told me, or I wish there was somebody there to kind of give me a heads up. Is there something that do you guys even get involved in that process? Like with folks? Well, I'm just wondering like how, because again, it's almost been 20 years.
Oh,
since I ran down that path. Like when I was going to college, Facebook was 1 year old.
I had a MySpace, and then Facebook was. Remember that? Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
Yeah, you do.
oh, and you can make your own. You have your top 10, and you can do your own
Your
background.
own wall. Your own back.
Bruh, man.
You
That's
know,
where that's where I learned to. People don't know this, but I built websites on the side, and like so I've been doing it for like the last 25 years. But I learned to code from MySpace. Like I could tell you HTML off the like just I
all
memorized it.
day.
Yeah, it's stupid.
That's another. Well, we should have another
That's
podcast just over that. Well, a man of many talents you are. So to answer your question, yes, MSU we do. We actually host a program called Cafe con Leche with a third party group, and they help our local students here at LISD with the FAFSA or TASFA. TASFA is for those that are undocumented citizens and don't qualify for federal financial aid. So we do those services. Yeah.
How long has that been?
Twice a year at our campus.
I'm not upset. I love it. I just didn't know.
Oh, no. And we haven't done a good enough job to promote. I would say about 3 years now. It's been
really
in place.
Just you guys or the state in general?
Just us. Now,
okay.
Other state schools might host something like that, but ours is just called Cafe con Leche, and it was piloted in Wichita Falls at the main campus, and then we brought it down here in partnership with LISD, and it's gaining some traction because the counselors at the high schools don't have time to be financial aid advisor, and that's a whole different ballgame, right? As you've said. But we didn't have that. I didn't have that growing up. I learned it as I went, and I'm a student right now working on my doctorate online, and I'm using financial aid and borrow what I need, and that's it. That's it.
So Cafe con Leche. So that's what you guys started. But so what I was talking about was you said the FAFSA and then you said TASFA. I didn't know if TASFA has that always been a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm not. So
Texas. That's a financial aid. It's another one of those long acronyms. Yeah.
Where does that money come from? And I'm not sorry. I'm not sure. I'm not like I'm not going to get political. Like I'm all for it, but I'm just like, if it's for those that are undocumented, we live in Texas. Texas is usually not the friendliest to those that are undocumented, right? And
right. You know, that's a lot of those monies are set aside from the state. Usually they're via different grants. You know, maybe Title III, Title IV. And I'm not. Forgive me. I'm not. But they come from the state, and they're usually. I want to say that each biennium, you know, the state legislature determines how much money each school gets, you know, state school. Yeah. There's usually some funds left over, probably in the general fund, and those go towards the TASFA. But the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board is kind of like, what's the name of the TEA is for K through 12?
Yeah.
Okay, so the coordinating board is like that to us for state schools. So it's somewhere in there. All those monies are in there, and it's through the different Title III and Title IV grants. So,
I like that.
Yeah,
man, I will. You know, and again, like there's so much to the education game, like not just the schooling, but the financing, and then you know you add in the extra layer of those that are undocumented, and what does that look like? And then don't even, you know, get talking about those that are in foster care, how they get quote unquote, don't they get completely free schooling? If you've been in the foster care system,
there are ways to make.
If you've been in the foster care system, I know that you get free college tuition. I don't know if the boarding is included as well.
Usually in those circumstances, what I've seen is tuition and fees are usually included.
Okay.
Or they're brought down to a very affordable amount. And most state universities have a program where if you make, let's say, $65,000 or less a year, after you've applied all the financial aid, all the scholarships and grants, whatever's left in your balance is paid for, taken care of by the school. We call it Mustang's Guarantee. UNT calls it Eagle Promise. Every state school has their own program. UTA does it. So everybody's got something to help students, low income students specifically. But I will say this on record here on the tuition and fees, the cost of higher ed should never be a barrier for anybody. There are too many ways to make school work. Now, I'm not saying they're easy all the time.
Yeah.
And that includes loans too. I think if you do it intelligently and you have somebody that can help you, like myself, like you, then what's wrong? Because a student loan, this is your education. It's an investment. It's not a car payment. It's not something that depreciates. It should appreciate with time. So, to say I can't afford school and you don't want to go, no, I just can't buy into that. argument anymore. Yeah, I think it's so worth it.
I mean, I think it is absolutely worth it. But then again, going back to that, the students these days, they kind of know where they want to go, right? Like they know the path that they want to go on. Like me, I got to UNT. I wanted to be a graphic designer, and because I wanted to make websites, I wanted to make logo. Like that's what I wanted to do. And then my first year, they were like, "Oh, you got to take drawing." And I was like, "I draw with the computer." I was like, "Why do I need to draw with my hand?" Like, no, you need to take drawing. Everybody has to take drawing. And so I switched my major to business. And so I thought I knew what I wanted to do, right? But when it came down to it, I was just like, this is not for me. And so then I go into business, and so it's like it's a completely different world than what I thought about it. But now I have all these student loans, and so I may have wanted to get a degree in XYZ, but I ended up getting something over here. But now I'm not even using it. Like I have friends that have degrees in education, but they're in sales. But the world seems to only care that they have a degree. I got a buddy that has a degree in anthropology. I'm sorry, what? He's got a degree in anthropology, but the world just wants him to have a degree. And so I'm wondering when that requirement is going to change. I'm not expecting you to answer it. I'm just talking out the side of my neck.
No, sure. I think, okay, so to speak to your point, you make a good argument about I have this degree, but I'm not using it. Well, sometimes, and I hate to say it, sometimes just getting a bachelor's degree just gets you table stakes at the job. It's table stakes. I'll just call it what it is.
Yeah.
But if you look at higher education, someone once told me, okay, higher education, is it vocational, or are we really trying to increase your knowledge base? And someone told me that at SMU. So I taught at SMU for 3 years, and they're much different than Midwestern State University, right? And somebody said, again, are you here because you just want to get a vocational trade, or do you really want to expand your intellectual prowess, your everything, And I'm like, because an argument can be made that, yeah, you got this degree and you're not using it, but I would fair to say that you probably are using some aspects of that degree. You just may not know it. If you think more broadly about it, think more critically about it. For example, we know that lawyers, doctors, PhD students, people in business, we're all trained to think a certain way. So when you have that lens, everything you look at in life is that way. Not just what you're studying, but how you view life. Your lens is colored differently. So sometimes is it really what you're studying, or is it really about expanding your knowledge base, widen, your scope, is kind of what I think of.
That's kind of what and then you have some girls that go to college to get their Mrs. degree, right? They just no shade.
Well, hey, I met my wife at Midwestern State University. I wasn't expecting, but we can also look at college, the university life. This, being a student there, is sometimes that's the best. That's a learning lab. That's a life learning lab there, because you can make mistakes there, and usually, you're not going to get reprimanded too heavily, or there's, the concessions aren't like you have to go to jail. Maybe you just write a paper, or maybe you're suspended, but that's where you learn about who you are, and life is sometimes on the college campus.
I'm laughing because my very first semester, it was my first semester.
Oh, let me hear it.
I was this close to getting kicked out of college.
Why am I not surprised by that?
It wasn't even having to do with grades. Like if I wasn't in college, let's just say if I wasn't in college, I would have got it arrested. We're just gonna leave it there.
Fraternity? Were you fraternity?
No, I was, but it just had nothing to do with fraternity.
No, with that. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I got you, bro. I got you.
That's
Hey, man, look, I never left college. I'm still working for my alma mater. I never left.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to be said about higher education, especially that residential feel when you can be in person.
Absolutely. Like I tell people, you know what? Like no shade to the junior colleges and the community colleges and things like that. Absolutely, it is an entirely different experience. And so I do a lot with, again, high school kids, and I try to tell them, they're so excited to go to college, and I'm like, first 2 years, that's about it. Like that, the first 2 years is the college experience, right? After that, you don't care. You want to get out, and so you go. They're like, oh, I can't wait to go this and the parties, and I'm like, first 2 years. After that, you won't care.
Well, Josh isn't a lot of things in life kind of like, it's kind of that honeymoon phase as people say things. And then you're like,
Ooh.
okay, what's next? And I think that's just human nature. But, again, I tell people, look at your degree, get what you need to get if you have that path, but think beyond that certificate or that diploma. Think about really what you learned and the people, because I tell people all the time, students going in, you're going to learn as much in the classroom as you will out of the classroom, maybe even more out of the classroom.
Facts. I like it, man. Bro, we've already been going 40 minutes. And again, I want to be respectful of your time, man. But you've answered a lot of my questions, a lot of things that I had going on in my head. But like, what is something that you would leave those students, not even those students, those parents that are about to have students going into college or that are in college? Like, what would you leave them with?
A couple of things. One, it's okay. It's okay. And what I mean by that is if your son or daughter, or even yourself, if you're looking for what's the next step, and if it doesn't fit the norm, that's okay. Because I think I can tell you my own life testimony. I got my degree in marketing. My master's was in PE. Here I am, an enrollment director at Midwest. Not connected at all, but they are, share that in another podcast. Second, do as much research as you can. Look at as many avenues as you can. You have to do, but find somebody like myself, like you, Josh, that can be a resource for you. Because I think you brought up a good point tonight is we need a guide. We need somebody to kind of really show us and be that resource. Because starting college, whether you're a traditional student or non-traditional, it's a lot. It's a lot. So find that person you can talk to and you trust.
Oh, I thought I felt like the way you were going, I was just like, man, he's got one more.
Well, the next one would be, let's do this again, because we've unpacked a lot of things tonight. And then Josh, thank you again for having me. You do such a good job. And for those of you that don't, Josh is an amazing steward of the area. We served together on the Louisville Ed Foundation, and really Josh got me into LEF, and here we are. It's how do we get these students prepared and give them opportunities for the next chapter of their lives. So bravo to you, man.
I don't want you guys hating on me in the comments. I'm just kidding. Nobody hates
Don't hate on Josh. He's awesome, really.
It's usually text messages like, I can't believe you said that. And I'm just like, hey, you know what?
Bro.
Some of the things that I post on social media, I strategically pick like 7-second snippets to poke the bear. I like poking the bear. Poking the bear. Sometimes you
have to poke the bear. You have to challenge things. You do, but that's part of higher education. You got to challenge the norm.
Yeah,
I'm about challenge.
You're good. I don't have anything else. I was about to end it, man. You guys know, man, everybody out there in podcast land, you guys have been fantastic. Thank you for tuning in. Like the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. Until next week, take care. God bless. We love you. We out of here.